We lived in Leicester. I graduated from Leicester Academy, which was one of the oldest schools in the country, formed in 1784. And from there, I got a scholarship to go to Leicester Junior College. I graduated from Leicester Junior College in 1942. The war had started, and I wanted to be in the war. And I wanted to be a Navy pilot. So I applied for the V-12 program as a Navy pilot. I passed all the exams for that, except when it came to the physical, they turned me down with my ears because I had scars on them from abscesses when I was a young man. And I was very disappointed because I was to be inducted on July 26, 1942 in the Federal Building in Boston. 7 of us, and one of them was Ted Williams of the Boston Red Sox.
How did that, this was 42, how did it feel being in the same location, same area of induction as, I imagine, somebody who you thought was a pretty great ball player?
He was my favorite ball player then, and I will say this, Ted Williams went into the Navy program, became a pilot, became a Marine pilot, was an ace in the Marines for 3 years during World War II. Then he was in the reserves, and he was in the Korean War for 2 more years. 5 years of his career he gave up in the military. And he was a hero in there, and he would have had every record in baseball had he hadn't gone in and done his duty for this country.
You like that rocking chair?
I shouldn't rock. I gotta stop. I gotta stop.
That's okay. I don't think anybody. I think we stopped you soon enough. People watching this aren't going to get too seasick. You being an old Marine, though, probably been through that. Been through that more than once. I want to go back to something. You said you had a problem with your ears. Is that right? What was the problem?
Well, I had an abscess when I was young, and it left a scar on my eardrum, and you can't fly with that defect.
I would imagine you were pretty disappointed.
I was absolutely disappointed because that's what I wanted to do. So then I went to work. I said, I'll enlist in the Marine Corps later on.
Why did you want to be a pilot?
Well, everybody wants to be something, and I thought a pilot was a pretty good job. And that's why I went for it. So then when I didn't be a pilot, I went to work for a foundry in Worcester, Massachusetts. I went to work one day. I can stop that, you know.
No, that's okay. You went to work. No, go ahead. That's okay.
I went to work for a foundry, and it was so hot, 120 degrees, and at 2 o'clock when they poured the metal iron, it got to be 150 degrees. So I said, oh, tomorrow can't be as bad as this. Tomorrow was as bad. Second day, I quit work. I never went back for my pay. I said, I'd rather die than work in a foundry.
Okay, now what? I noticed you you were inducted in November of 42.
That's right, because then after that, I enlisted in the Marine Corps.
Okay, you enlisted in the Marine Corps. Well, what was it like in Worcester when the war started? Do you remember that?
Worcester was a very industrialized city. We had Norton machine, heel machine, and they were doing a lot of military work. And my uncle was a foreman in heel machine. So he got me a job after I quit the foundry. And I worked in there for about 2 months. And I had a good job. I was in the parts department. And in those days, you could work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because I had a place to sleep where I worked. So I used to get paid 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, until after about 3 weeks, the government said, oh, no more of that. You had to take a day off. So I was making $1.09 an hour because I had a bonus for working nights, you know. And I was a very rich kid in those days at $1.09 an hour.
Was there any question in your mind about going down and enlisting?
No, I knew I was going to enlist. I did not want to be drafted. I had signed up with my draft board as required by law, and then I did not want to be drafted, and I didn't want to go in the Navy, and I did not want the Army, and I wanted the Marine Corps. So I enlisted in the Marine Corps.
Okay, so you enlisted so you could pick your choice.
That's right. I didn't want to be drafted, no.
All right, so you're now enlisted. You're now in the Marines. Where did you do your training?
I went by train from Boston to Parris Island, South Carolina for boot training.
What was that like?
Boot training, it's the greatest training in the United States. Every young person in this country should have a military training, such as a Marine boot camp. Every single thing you learn there is a lesson that carries on with your whole life. I'll give you the first one. The first day we go to mess hall to eat. You get a tray, you walk through the line, take anything you want, much as you want. And when you get through eating, you go to the door with your receptacle, there's big empty GI cans there, and the big sergeant is standing there, and he says, no garbage in the can, it goes in your pocket. In other words, they taught you, take as much as you want, but what you take, you eat. First lesson. And these lessons went on every single thing all the way through. And I'll never forget going to, for the medical part, we went to the medical tent, and the fellow says, big sergeant standing there, he's got it looks like a bicycle pump and a long 8-inch needle on it, and he says, take your pants off, lower your pants and bend over. And he shoves it in your rump, and the needle breaks off. He said, pull your pants up, get out of here. He said, now you're a real Marine. That's how they start you off. But everything is a lesson to show you that you're a little better and bigger than everybody else.
But tell me honestly, when you were about 20 years old.
That's correct.
At the time, I'm going to guess you didn't think it was the world's greatest place to be in Marine boot camp when you were 20 years old. It was kind of rough, wasn't it?
Yes, it was rough, but there were a whole lot of us there, and we were proud. I'll tell you how mail call. We didn't get any mail for the first month. They didn't give you any mail. You had no communication, nothing from home, no message, nothing. And when your mail came the first time, they got a whole pile of mail there, and the sergeant's out there, calls your name off, throws it on the floor. You calls your name off, throws it on the ground, all right? Now we're all crawling around on the ground picking up our mail. Humbling, makes you humble you, all right? Every single thing had a purpose, and it served me all the way through my life. I turned out to be pretty successful in life, and I attribute a lot of it to what I learned in that Marine boot camp.
How long were you in boot camp, and where did you go after
I went
that?
2 months in boot camp, and then they sent me to, I was in the 800, they went to the Fleet Marine Force, and I was sent to communication school in Camp Lejeune, South Carolina. Camp Lejeune happened to be the second largest camp in the United States, the largest being Fort Bragg. This is by area, and Camp Lejeune was the second. And I went through communication school there for 2 years. Then after that, we joined the 4th Marine Division, half of it, and we trained there a little bit, and then we went to California by train and became the 4th Division in San Diego. And we continued training in San Diego till December of the following that year. Because in December 1943, I left San Diego in an LST for our first invasion in the Marshall Islands, Roy and Namur, which happened to be a Japanese air base with 3,400 airmen there.
We're going to talk about that in just a minute. Let me just take you back into boot camp a little bit, or earlier, prior to getting sent overseas. You knew you were going to be going into action, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. Were you looking forward to that, or what was your attitude about combat at that point when you're 20?
You do what you have to do. I'm going to say this first, even before we go further. When you're in the Marine, I suppose anybody, but when you're in the service, you don't worry about getting killed. You always think it's the other fellow that's going to get killed. And I was so proud to be a Marine, we weren't worrying about anything. We tried to be a good one. And we worked at it. We were proud from day one. We were told and instructed we were the best in the world. And even before we were, we thought we were.
What was it like? You grew up, your whole life was in the Worcester area, was Massachusetts, and you go down to a Paris Island, Camp Lejeune, and you're thrown in there with, guys your age, but from where? All over the country, right? What's that's like? How do you adapt to that kind of situation?
It's no problem. I'm going to go back up a little bit. My father died when I was 15 years old. I was the oldest of 5 children, and I was always an ambitious kid. After he died, even before, I peddled newspapers morning and night. I sold the Saturday Evening Post every Tuesday. I peddled the Ladies' Home Journal on Thursdays once a month. I cleaned Mrs. Finn's house on Saturday. I polished the brass at the
Hawaii were quite nice.
We lived in a tent city at the base of Mount Halakea, the largest inactive volcano in the world. I lived there for 19 months, off and on when I was between battles. We lived in rows. There were 12 tents in each row, and the last tent had a John in it. It was our outhouse. And we lived there, and it was like home. There were 8 of us in a tent. And I'm going to tell you another story about this tent. Every time we'd have an invasion, we'd come back to Maui, and they'd have a beer party for us from the profit they made on our PX. And I used to always volunteer. I never volunteered much in the service because I knew better. But I always volunteered to go on the beer run to bring the beer to the beer party. And it was down at it was a narrow gauge railroad. The beer would come in, and I had a good sharp knife, and I could take a case of beer, cut a fine hole in it, take 2 bottles of beer out of each case, seal it so it wouldn't look like anybody had been into it. So the whole floor of our tent and under the dirt was full of beer. So whenever somebody came to visit us, we always had beer. It wasn't ice cold, but it was ground cold, you know. And we did that every invasion. We went and served beer, sold beer, and served it.
Tell me about the second action that you.
All right. Then we left Maui. We left Maui. They put us on an LST again, and we don't tell us till you've gone about 3 days offshore. You don't know where you're going. Then they have school. They bring you out. They bring the maps out, and then they explain where we're going. We're going to the island of Saipan in the Marianas Island. There were 30,000 troops there, 9,000 troops there, and it was a big air base for the Japanese, and we were going to take that. It was a big invasion. There was going to be the fourth Marine Division that I was in was going to be on the left flank. The 27th Army was going to be on the middle flank, in the middle, and the 2nd Army Marine Division was going to be on the right flank. And we fought the war. It was a terrible landing. I went in on a Higgins boat, and they were shooting at us like crazy. A lot of the guys never even made it to the shore. I was fortunate I made it, naturally, otherwise I wouldn't be here. And they pounded us like hell when we arrived. And then we fought them. It took us 15 days before we beat them. We killed 9,000 of them there. One night, we had a banzai attack. About 500 of the Japs, near the end of the battle, 500 Japs that went into our area. Whatever, if they had guns, they used them on us. If they had machetes, they had knives, any weapon at all. It was their last stand, and they came in and they gave us the business that night. And we had a communications sergeant who was an old Marine who hadn't been in all his life, career Marine, and he was an alcoholic. And we captured beer and sake from the Japs, and we always had a party when we did that. And this guy was drunk, and he was hollering like hell about when the Japs were coming at us, you know, and communications officers, get rid of him. We had to kill our sergeant right there, because either all of us or him. That I'll never forget. But he was hollering, giving our position away, so we had to eliminate him. Another very...
Whoa, wait a minute. You
eliminated one of our own, because he was giving our position away.
What do you mean you eliminated?
We shot him. You have to do that. If you're going to jeopardize the life of 500 of us, you have to do that. So he was doing the right thing. This happened other times. So
this happened other times where you have to shoot.
Well, yeah, no, it's not a common thing, but when you're being attacked, you don't want some idiot giving your position away. So what are you going to do? You got to kill him before the enemy killed you. Another terrifying episode on Saipan was when the battle was over. It was all on cliffs, and we were sitting there, and we were going up to the end, and there's only hundreds of Japs left, and they weren't going to be captured. It's not Japanese code to be captured. You either die for your country, or you don't get captured, all right? And they were standing on the cliff with their knives, and they'd devour themselves. They'd cut themselves open, and their stomachs would fall out, they'd fall in the ocean, all right? And the sea was red with blood and bodies down there, and sharks, you could see sharks bobbing there having a luau, these sharks, all right? But the sad part, this wasn't sad to see the Japs go, but it was sad to see the native women that they told that we were going to kill them. And the native women were standing there with their babies, and the Japs told them, "You better go over the cliff because you're going to get killed." These women would jump into that ocean with their babies, and it was sad. I still shudder when I think of seeing that happen. Lots of them did that, and they were there in the ocean being eaten by the sharks. That was the last stand on Saipan. Now,
What was that like? I mean, you were 22 years old or so.
Oh,
years old.
yeah.
Could anything have prepared you for something like
No,
that?
no, but your training tells you, well, you know what the Japs were and how they acted. You knew you weren't going to a church picnic. If you were frightened, now we had people in our outfit that couldn't take battle. We had Tom Doherty from Nacogdoches, Texas, the biggest barroom Marine you ever saw in your life. You weren't going out drinking, you brought Tom with you because he'd clean up any fight. But as soon as Tom was in battle for 1 hour, he broke down. He couldn't take it. See, it was in your system. If you had it in you, you didn't. Now, Tom was a phony, and not that he wanted to be, but he just couldn't take battle, all right? And the rest of us, it was our job. We went and did it. Now, I'm going to tell you the story of a real Marine is on Saipan. When I told you there was 4th Division here, the Army Division in the middle, and the 2nd Marine Division. So we went up good distance on Saipan in the 4th Marine Division. 2nd Marine Division went up quite a ways. The Army didn't even go up half the distance we did. So our biggest battle on Saipan was with the 27th Army Division because they wouldn't keep up to us. They exposed our flanks on both sides when we were supposed to be equal. And the Army's version was, well, you people wanted to get killed. And our theory in life was we wanted to get it over with. And eventually, the Army Division was removed from Saipan. You'll read that in your history book. General Smith and the Army Division was removed from Saipan because their temperament in operation is different from the Marine Corps. You saw that in Iraq. Lots of times when they had to go do something fast, it was always the Marines that did it.
So there was a real sense of pride being a Marine.
Nothing like it. I told you about that needle, didn't I? Yeah? No, once you are, it's true today. When a Marine sees another Marine today, we're brothers. At the airport where I volunteer, I see a Marine go by or somebody with a Marine shirt or something, Semper Fi, he'll come right over to me. We're brothers, all right? It's very, very close.
Did you get into, how about yourself in terms of combat situations on Saipan?
Well,
What was that like for you? What were you doing?
Well, I was a telephone man. We had to run telephone wires up ahead for the forward observers. And I was a switchboard operator. I was in communications.
What happened then after Saipan?
After Saipan, they brought us down the clean part of Saipan, and we rested there for 10 days. They brought us new men. They brought us new equipment, and we rested for 10 days. Then they put us on some landing craft, and they shipped us down to Tinian, 7 miles away. And we invaded Tinian. We didn't leave Maui. We didn't leave Saipan to go to Maui. We went from Saipan to Tinian. That's another Marianas Island. Marianas Island had 7,000 troops on it with an airfield. So we landed, just the 4th Division. And it was the best landing we ever had. A few shells were going around us, but it was peaceful. I said, boy, this is a piece of cake. So we set our guns up, everybody was in. But that night, they turned every single thing they had on us. I was in 4 battles. The worst night I ever had in combat was the first night on Tinian. All their guns were zeroed in on us. You read in your history books the Battle of Tinian, they'll say some artillery outfit got the beating, or we were the artillery outfit. We lost all our officers, and the 7 officers were killed in the forward observers. In the morning, there was no one left around me but myself. I was a switchboard operator. Everyone was killed. It's a miracle you lived that night. And I'm going to tell you this, I don't tell everybody, but the communication officer put me up for the Bronze Star that night. It was the worst thing you ever saw. I didn't know I was ever going to pull through, but you weren't worried about it, you know. I was there at my switchboard, not that there was much doing on the switchboard because there was nobody left to do it. And he put me up for the Bronze Star. And 4 weeks later, the old captain come back to me and he said, Desrosiers, he said, you know how the military works. He said, you know, they gave you a Bronze Star for some second lieutenant that didn't deserve it, and he said, "You got a letter of commendation." So I got beat out of it. But I was pleased for the recognition. My discharge shows that I got a letter of commendation for what I did on Tinian. Then after Tinian, we stayed on that a few weeks, and we got dysentery. And now we were isolated. Our outfit got dysentery. And dysentery is very bad because you don't want the whole division to get it, So they put us on a ship to go back to Maui, isolated. A whole regiment, not regiment, the battalion, 140 of us. And we stayed there and quarantined 30 days in Hawaii. And I can tell you every morning, we'd have to get up at 4:30, bend over, and the corpsman had come with a crank and something on the end of the crank. He had to give everybody a ream job because they're trying to find out who was the carrier. It got so bad we couldn't stand, we couldn't sit. But after 30 days, we were all clear and we were normal again. We could go out back to our slop shoot drinking our 10-cent beer. But by then I got
Sure, it wasn't the beer.
No, we didn't have any beer on the island. And we had a good time on Tinian after that. Not Tinian, on Maui. We used to go down training. We did this when we first landed on Maui. We'd go and practice battle and moving up, and we could give 3 rounds. We were on ranches. There were a lot of cattle in the ranches, and you give us 3 rounds, and in 3 rounds, 3 miles away, we could kill a cow. Now, we weren't supposed to kill cows because the government had to pay $75 for every cow we killed. So we killed quite a few accidentally on purpose. But that was our pride, was killing cows. That was our Maui. So then we were there for training. Now we were going to we didn't know where the next one. We got new personnel, we got training, and then we left on LST. We didn't know where we were going. 4 days out, they bring out the maps and things. They're going to Iwo Jima. They told us Iwo Jima was 8 square miles. We should do that in 4 days. So we were all set. Oh, that's a piece of cake now. This is my 4th invasion,
You should take it in 4 days?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's 8 square miles, So, and so we landed. When I went to Iwo on an LST. When you go to an invasion, your first de-embarkment point is about 4 miles away, and then you move closer, and about 2 miles away is your final point, and then you go ashore. So we did that. I got 2 miles out. I was in the 4th wave. I was in an LST. We were an amphibious tractor. We were on the tractor when the gate opens and we go out, and just as I went down, a huge wave came and sunk our tractor. So now we all have life belts on, so our tractor's gone, our guns are gone, and they pull us ashore, put us on another tractor, and I landed on Iwo soaking wet. I was wet for days. That didn't bother you. So we landed, and the beach was so cluttered, even on the 4th wave, you couldn't land. You couldn't get anything ashore. We landed, LST couldn't even get close to the shore. We walked in, they were shooting at us. It was just, it was so bad you couldn't even worry about how bad it was, And then the LST pulled out after everybody was ended. We had to unload the ammunition. I'm going to tell you about the ammunition on an LST. We leave Maui. Before we go to an invasion, we go down to Wakaloo. That was the only base seaport on Maui. And we'd put clover leaves of shells in there, 5 feet deep, and then we'd put planks on it. And then to bring our amphibious tractors. And I can tell you now that if we were ever hit, then we'd have been the first astronauts because we had enough ammo in there. We'd have gone clear past the moon. But we never got hit. But we had a submarine attack at Eniwetok, but they missed us, and the destroyers guarding us did a good job getting rid of them. But we did have torpedoes go by us on Eniwetok. So now we landed on Iwo. We couldn't go anywhere. The sand on Iwo was 10 feet deep and went over your shoes when you stepped in it. So we just stayed there. We gained 20 feet the first day. They were shooting at us continuously.
20 feet?
Well, we had nothing. Because you went in, I'll show you pictures after. You go up, and that was an incline. So we hid behind the incline. And we had thousands of casualties the first day. The beach was cluttered with dead Marines. I'll show you pictures of that. It was very intense. So you did what you could. But the next morning, we gained more territory. Our job was to take the airfield, the Japanese airfield. And it took us 4 days to finally get that. And there was continuous fire. We set up and we fired continuously. We fired 17,000 rounds on Iwo Jima, continuous. I'll tell you, I never changed my clothes. I never had a hot meal when I was on Iwo. If I wasn't on my switchboard, I was lugging ammunition or helping the corpsmen with the dead people or injured. We always had something to do. The only water we had to drink was water that was distilled on a ship. They brought it in a little tank. That's all. No hot meals. We ate rations for 26 days. But you didn't care about that. You were worrying about getting that battle over with and getting out of there. So we did this continuously. I'm going to tell you another story. When the third day, they brought in some Seabees. They were going to build rework on the airfield that we had captured the day before. We weren't even near the airfield yet, so these Seabees are in. So the Seabees didn't know what to do. They'd never been in battle. So this one old guy, I called him an old guy because he was 40 years old and I was 22, you know. And I said, come on, you can stay with me. So I had a foxhole, and I let him come in my foxhole. And I had to go out the next day. I was laying wire, and we were fighting the Japs. This guy stayed in he had no job, which is not his fault. I came back that night, and he had to go to the John, and he went to the John in my foxhole. So I was quite upset, you know. I said, this is my home. You broke the sanctity of my home. Now get the hell out. I chased him out. If you ever saw a frightened sea bee, it's like, I don't know if he got killed that night or died from fright, but he did the wrong thing. If I could go out and work, he could go out and do his thing too. So we had little episodes like that all the time. I'm going to tell you a story. Our Jeep, they couldn't bring our radio Jeep in till the 5th day because you couldn't run any vehicles. No tired vehicles could run in that sand. And then after they brought in metal tracks, you could run tired vehicles. So our Jeep came in. And Libby was from New Hampshire. He was our radio Jeep, my buddy. So I went up to see Libby. And I'm standing there talking to Libby. And the Japs were always sending over these 32-inch mortars, the biggest mortars anybody used in any war. The Germans didn't even have them. And these things would explode over your head and send all kinds of metal all over your area to wound or kill you. And while I'm talking to Libby, a big piece, this thing goes off overhead, and a big piece of metal comes and cuts Libby's head off, all right? So Libby is separated from his head now, and there I am standing to my buddy 1 second, and 1 second later, Libby's there on the ground, not with me anymore. So, but these are the things. I never forgot that. I think of that many times, how I lost Libby. We're standing there innocently. And I say that story because how fortunate I was during this war. I was with a lot of people that got killed. I can tell you about Gombos later, another story. I was just lucky. So people say, how come you ended up a PFC? Look, I says, I'm alive, and I could have been killed if I had a different job. Not that it was any more dangerous or less dangerous, but I made it. I'll go back to Gombos. He was on Saipan. Gombos and I were in the same boat. He was from Bridgeport, Connecticut. And we went out to do some kind of duty, I forget what, telephone duty. And while we were gone, a Jap got in our hole, all right? So he was going to catch us when we came back. So Gombos was the first one back. So right away, the Japanese knifed him to death, all right? Could have been me. The first guy back was going to get it. So there again, I was blessed and I made it. I had a lot of episodes like that. They say, how come you didn't do anything over there? I said, no, I saved my life. Not purposely, but pretty well done. Yeah. So then after Iwo, we went back on a...
Tell me, let's talk just a minute about Iwo for just a moment, and kind of take us inside what it's like, you know, for a PSC in the Marine Corps on these islands. Talk to me just about the conditions. Talk to me about the heat, the humidity.
Iwo was a sulfur island, and it had places where hot water and hot air would come up, just like in Yellowstone National Park, all right? It didn't squirt way up in the air, but there were fumes, sulfur fumes. And you lived in the ground. Because of the ash, the ground, you couldn't dig a hole. If you dig a 3-foot hole, it had to be 6 foot, before it was good enough in the bottom. So we lived under those conditions. You just dug big enough hole, and that was your foxhole. That was your home. The island was brutal with the terrain because of this all volcanic ash. When I went back to Evo 4 years ago, 2006, the island had gotten 20 feet bigger because of all this that's going on.
Tell me about chow. You talked about rations.
Well, that's all we ate.
What were those like?
We ate. Well, they were good. We had a K ration, which is a chocolate bar. It had all kinds of vitamins and stuff in it. And then you had a field ration for the C ration. You had a can of tuna fish mixed with something, and you had crackers, a couple other things, and 4 cigarettes. That was your ration there.
What'd you drink?
That dirty water I told you about. Mm-hmm. Fill your flask up. It had black flakes, not flakes, but streams in it, from the distillate. It was all right. It was pure enough, but it sure looked like hell.
Did you have purification pills or tablets or anything like that?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. Yeah.
What meal did you miss most?
You don't miss your meal. You went there to eat. I never took a bath. I went down to the ocean once to take a bath in the ocean, but that's even worse because now it's sticky. Now your ocean water is salty and sticky. So we gave up on that.
You wouldn't give me a few bucks for a good hamburger?
Yeah, but you weren't thinking about that. You wanted to beat those buggers, and you wanted to get out of there. We had a job to do, and we were supposed to do it in 4 days. And finally, on the 26th day, we got in enough of their caves, and we got out. The caves in Evo were tremendous. They were miles and I didn't go into the caves. I never got that far. I've been to them since when I went back, but there were miles and miles of caves there. All right, and they would come out, fire at you, and then run back in their caves. All right. So each time they came out, we killed a few of them, and they killed a few of them. They killed a few of us. But the difference with them is they had no more supplies coming to them. They ran out of water. So we had more marbles in there. We had to win. But they were going to be as dirty as they could till the very end. And they were going to kill you, kill as many. They were supposed to kill at least 10 Japs 10 Americans before they killed themselves. And they did a good job. We lost 6,821 men were killed on Iwo Jima. We killed 23,000 of them, all right? There was about 100 captives out of the 23,000, and we wounded 18,500. You add that total up, it comes to 50,000 casualties on 8 square miles. That, to me, and history will tell you, that was the fiercest battle in World War II. Concentrated, 8 square miles.
Give me your impressions back then of what you thought of the Japanese soldier.
I thought they were excellent soldiers. And people say you must hate them. I don't hate them. Remember, the guys that fought us, they didn't want to be there any more than I wanted to be there, all right? Their philosophy I didn't agree with.
Which was?
They had to die before their country, They couldn't be captured. They had to be... Their emperor was God and all this, that kind of stuff I didn't believe in.
What was our philosophy back then? When you were through training, did they talk about being captured or anything like that?
No. Well, we got training on being captured. Just give them your name and serial number and nothing else. Nothing else.
Any stories that came back to you of guys that were captured? What was the conversation about?
No, we don't. None of our guys were captured. Well, if they were captured, we never saw them. We never saw them.
Did the possibility be...
See, the Japanese couldn't catch our men. All they could do was kill them. From an island, they had no way to bring them to anywhere, So all they could do with anybody they captured was to kill you.
So you knew that this was any type of combat was combat to the death.
That's correct.
Did you find yourself ever in a combat situation? I mean, you were in communications. You saw a lot of it. You saw the results of it, and that's not your job. But tell me how you were equipped in terms of arms yourself, and if you found yourself, did you ever have an opportunity to use your?
No, not. we weren't in the front line, you understand? But in Iowa, it made no difference. There was no front line. It was a whole island, 8 square miles was. But I had when I first went in the service, I had a Springfield rifle. That was the old World War I rifle. And then I got the M21 when that came out. And then they gave us the carbine because it was lighter for us to carry. But I always had a carbine rifle with me. We had hand grenades. We trained in all of that. You want to
Tell me about you used the flamethrowers.
The flamethrowers. I wasn't in the flamethrower department, but the flamethrower was a marvelous invention. I'll tell you. When you see a Marine go up to a cave, and he'd light that bugger, and he'd shoot it in there, man, you knew he just fried about 15 of them. Once in a while, one would come running out on fire, you know. So you just finished him off right there, got him out of his misery. But the flamethrower was an excellent, on Iwo, where you had caves. It was a wonderful war instrument.
Now, did you ever have any leave during your 3 years then?
I never had
home?
I never had a furlough. I went in. I had 3 years and a month. I never had a furlough. I never got home once from the day I went in the service. I never had a uniform. I had fighting clothes all the time I was there.
Did you think of home?
Yeah, I wrote to my mother regularly, and she wrote to me.
What did you guys write about?
I could only tell her certain things. You know, all your letters were censored. You couldn't tell them, you know, what you were doing or the status of the this or that. You just say you'll be home safe pretty soon. You know, that's all you could tell them. You couldn't tell them what you were or what you were doing.
What kind of news did she give you? Did she give you news?
Oh, she'd tell you about home. Yeah, I had sisters, and my brother he went in the service after I did. He was working while I was in the Marine Corps. And my sister did very well. My older sister ended up being President Kennedy's secretary. She worked for the Kennedys for 19 years. She was President Kennedy's secretary.
Really?
So, yeah. That's another story, but I got a good story on that.
So were you ever lonely for home, or what was it like getting these letters?
I was no different than anybody else. We were all in the same boat. We weren't worried about that. We wanted to get the thing over with and all of us go home. We weren't crying, I want to come home, Mom, or this and that. We went to job to do it. We had a job to do, and we wanted to do it.
Did you ever, when you went in, did you ever think it was going to take all that work, all that time to finally get home?
Yeah, you had the slightest idea what the hell was going to happen. You had the slightest idea. You didn't even know where you're going, battle to battle, till you're on a ship and you're going to land. Then they told you what you're going to do. I slept on an LST 3 times across the Pacific. We slept right on the deck. We didn't have bunks. We didn't have anything. I had a poncho, piece of canvas. We laid on that. We'd get up in the morning, and we'd have breakfast if you want. I could eat. Most of the guys got seasick. I was very fortunate. I never got seasick. I could eat. And I'd have breakfast, but not much because you didn't do much. And we started playing pinochle. We played cards all day long. Except in the afternoon, we exercised for an hour and a half, all right? And then we played pinochle until the lamp went out. The smoking lamp went out when it was dark. As soon as it got dark, no more smoking, no more lights. Can't give your position away in the ocean. And we'd lay down on the deck. And we'd tell bullshit stories. You know, what are you going to talk about, all right? Lie to each other, all right? And we did that for like 31 days going to Marshall Islands, all right? 22 days going to Iwo Jima, all right? But you laid right on the, people asked me, what you sleep on? Spring steel, I used to tell them. Right on the deck of the ship. And I could eat. I could get down. Oh, you want to tell me about the troop ships going back? The quarters on a troop ship were low, and you had 5 bunks high. And I would always take the top bunk. It was the hottest, but at least nobody could throw up on you. The deck on the deck floor on your compartment troop ship was this high with throw up, all right? Oh, it stunk so bad. It was the heat from the engine. It was not very comfortable, but at least I didn't get sick. But I used to sleep up there if I could, and I'd crawl down over the other 4 bunks and go outside and get some fresh air. But I didn't get seasick. Seasickness is a terrible sickness. The guys would be on the rail, they wanted to die, they were so bad, all right? It's a terrible, terrible. Some people used to get sick walking up the plank to go aboard ship. They knew they were going to get sick, so they did it prematurely. Yeah, a lot of guys suffered like hell with that seasickness. And the LST is a square box and would go sideways as far as it would go forward. You know, it took you forever. You didn't do many miles a day on an LST.
What happened after EWO then? Tell me, take us through
After
your
EWO?
service.
After EWO, we were still training. Our guns went from 75 pack howitzers. We went to 105 millimeters, bigger guns. Our 105s went to 155s. They kept going up because now we're going to have a land operation. And we got new training. We got new uniforms. And we were going to go to invasion Japan. We were going to invade them in March. So we found out after. We were going to invade Japan in March, and the 6th Marine Division
March of
45.
45.
Okay. No, 46. 46. The war ended in 45. We were going to invade them in March, in the spring of 46. And we were all ready for that. In the 6th Marine Division, we were the best assault troops in the world, and we were going to make the assault on Japan. And they were going to be loaded for us, geared to get us, and they'd have got a lot of it. They wouldn't have beat us, but they'd have killed half of us. I'll tell you that. I wouldn't have been here. That might have been my Waterloo. I didn't get it elsewhere, but I might have got it there. And we were ready. We didn't want to like it. So that's why somebody says to me, what about President Truman? You kind of got to love the guy. He's the guy that said, drop that bomb, and that bomb kept me from invading Japan. So then after that, when the war ended, we stayed in Maui. You never saw a bunch of happier guys in the world when we were on Maui. Instead of going that way, we were going home, you know.
What was that like on Maui when you guys were waiting to go home?
Oh, it wasn't good. They wouldn't let us go to town. They didn't trust us, you know, to go and be wild. And so we stayed right on base. I didn't get discharged. The war ended in August. I didn't get discharged until November. I went from Maui on an aircraft carrier to San Diego. But there we had bunks. This time we had bunks. The whole ship, no airplanes were on. It was just all bunks, you know, for thousands of us on an aircraft carrier. But we were tickled to death. We got to San Diego. They put us on big cattle trucks, and they brought us to Camp Pendleton. And we were glad to be back in the States, but they wouldn't let us off the base. They didn't trust us. We thought they were going to be too wild, you know, raise hell in town. And so I stayed on.
Were they right?
Well, they were right. I don't know how much damage we would have done, but I'll tell you some damage we did. Just before I went overseas at Camp Pendleton, the weekend before, 3 of us. Let's take a look here. Okay. Three of us went on a leave that Sunday. And you couldn't buy beer in California, but you could buy wine. So we bought some wine. We go to different towns, get a little slop it up. And one day, we ended up in a bowling alley in Encino. I forget the name of the town. And we went in the bowling alley, little winos, you know, full. So we took the bowling ball. The bowling alleys were made out of like Homer soap paper, you know. We threw all the bowling balls through the bowling alley. And pretty soon we hear a siren, and it's the sheriff. He said, "What the heck are you guys doing?" He says, "Come on, get in my car." He says, "You know, I got to lock you up for this, you know." He said, "You leaving tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah." He knew we were leaving. You know, he brought us back to camp. He said, "Don't ever do that again." But he brought us back. We should have been locked up. And we felt sorry for what we did, but that's why they don't let you go to town. You know, we have a good time. But we didn't have a good time after the war until we got discharged.
What was it like when you got home?
Well, I'll tell you what I did. They gave me 5 cents a mile to get home from Boston to Boston. From Bainbridge, Maryland. I got discharged in Bainbridge, Maryland to go to Boston. I got 5 cents a mile. I came home. I got to Boston on the train station. I got on the subway and I went home to my house. I knocked on the door. My mother came to the door and she was surprised to see me, all right? That was, now I'm not knocking what they did after the Vietnam War, but everybody came home Vietnam War. They had parades. They had this. I was gone over 3 years. I knocked on the door. That was my welcome. I was pleased to do it.
Was it enough?
Yeah, well, I was glad to do it. I was pleased to be in my own home, you know.
You think we should have done more?
No, no, no. My answer would be maybe they should have done less. That was all. We didn't turn down. I'm not looking for anything.
When you got home, after you got home, you said you were successful. You've been successful. What have you done since?
Okay. My buddy was Red Johnson from Brookline, Mass. We got discharged together. So, and it had a 52-20 club then. The government was going to give you $20 a week for 52 weeks till you got a job, you know. So he was happy. They said, you're going to be able to drink for 20 weeks, you know, 52 weeks, Johnson. So I did it for 2 weeks. I said, this is not my life. So I quit that, and I went and got a job at Sears Roebuck. I was going to go to finish my college at Boston University, but we couldn't get in. There were too many of us, you know. So I got a job at Sears Roebuck packing glasses, dishware and glasses up in the 7th floor of the big, they had a mail order house in Boston. It's gone now, but it was a multi-story building. It was big business in Sears Roebuck in Boston. So I worked there till I went to school. Then I got a job nights at a Howard Johnson at Kenmore Square, all right? When I was working days at Howard Johnson, at Sears Roebuck, I got a job at, so when I went to school, I quit Howard Johnson, I went to school, they made me night manager of the Howard Johnson. So I had a full-time job working at Howard Johnson at night, and I went to school daytime. So I did that for 3 years at Boston University.
Tell me about your activities now with the other veterans. What you've been doing there?
Well, I'm active in the Iwo Jima survivors. Up until a couple of years ago, we used to parade everywhere 15 times a year, but now they're all my age. I'm going to be 87 next month. We can't parade. I can't walk anymore. And all the boys are the same. We've lost quite a few of them, but we still got we parade once a year now on 4th of July. The Madison Parade in Madison, Connecticut, to me was the best parade we ever went to. But I missed it this year because we had a family reunion that I had to go to rather than the parade. But now we ride. I belong to I've been a member of the American Legion for 60 years. I belong to the VFW in Berlin, Connecticut. And I volunteer on other jobs. I've been volunteering at Bradley Field for 22, I'm in my 22nd year. I work at Monday nights at the bingo at the American Legion in Moodus. I work there. I've done that for 22 years. Since I retired, I've got volunteer jobs.
You went back to Iwo.
In 2006.
2006, you returned to Iwo.
Yeah, it was the 60th anniversary of the battle.
What kind of emotions?
I'll tell you, I brought my son with me. He wanted to go. He said, Dad, can I go with you? I said, sure. And we went. And we arrived at Iwo. We flew to Guam. And we left Guam that morning at 4 o'clock to fly to Iwo to be there at dusk. It was 700 miles away, Iwo, from Guam. And we had 3 Continental Airlines, big private airplanes. We flew around the island. That was very emotional, I'll tell you. When I saw flying around there, I kind of broke down, all right? And then we landed, and the Navy took very good care of us. They had Hummers there, they had Jeeps, they had trucks, they brought chairs in for us. They treated us royally. And you could get on a vehicle and they'd take you anywhere you wanted to go on the island. So the first thing I wanted to do was go on the beach. I went back to the beach. I can show you pictures of myself and the Marine Commandant on the beach. I got friendly with the Marine Commandant. That's another story. But it was nice. They brought us all over. Then I took a ride up to Mount Suribachi. Then we took around the whole island, went into one of the caves was their hospital cave. It was a huge cave. And their hospital bed they cut out a niche in the wall, and that's where they put their patients. Because they were never going to go anywhere. They were there to die, you understand? They were never going to go back to homeland. They were doomed. But they've had a shelf there, and they threw the dead on that. Or they tried to administer some kind of aid to them. It was sad to think about the way we thought we had it tough, but they had it tougher. But they asked for it. We didn't.
When you think back on your military career, those 3 years or so in the Marines, where do those 3 years for you had kind of fit? How do you put those in perspective in the rest of your life?
My 3 years in the Marine Corps were the greatest 3 years I ever had. I learned more. I did more. I learned what life is about. I learned what hardship is about. I learned what it was to go without. It was a lesson. I came out and I've done very well since, but I will give credit to the Marine Corps for what I am today. Everything they taught me was a lesson. I'll give you an example. You couldn't smoke when you're on the drill field when we were at boot camp, all right? And if you got caught with a cigarette on the field and you dropped it on the ground and they saw you, the guy would give you a spool of thread and he'd make you go around the camp until you had enough cigarette butts on that spool of thread, all right? And if you had to go to the John and you're parading, sometimes you got to take a little leak somewhere, so you get a bunch of guys around you and you'd go in the middle. We did that for everybody. You weren't supposed to do that, but if you got caught, all you had to do was to dig a 7-foot hole, and then and the hole had to be this wide because of the sand, even at the boot camp. And then you dig that, and then as soon as it was dug, the sergeant would come and say, "Now fill it in," all right? So you didn't try not to get caught smoking, try not to take a leak. Everything was a lesson, all right? You learned discipline.
Good job. Nicely done. Well done.